Welcome to Be Wise, information about cannabis for older adults. Brought to you by Active Aging Canada, a national charity that supports older adults living well and remaining active. Production for this podcast was made possible through a financial contribution from Health Canada's Substance Use and Addictions Program. Now, let's go to the Active Aging Canada studios and join National Executive Director Patty Clark and Ward Maxwell, Director of Marketing and Communications. Today, Cannabis and the Law, Part 2.
Today we're going to talk a bit more about cannabis and legal requirements. But what we're going to focus on today is cannabis content labeling. And this is important for you if you're looking at purchasing cannabis products. Now, the first thing that you have to understand, we're going to remind you again, is the cannabis plant contains a variety of chemical compounds called cannabinoids. And these include THC and CBD, tetrahydrocannabinol, and cannabidiol. There are hundreds of strains of cannabis in the variety of product forms that are available. Depending on how they're made, these products can have a range of potencies of THC and CBD. Now, this is an important distinction. THC is what makes people feel high or affects them mentally. It's the psychoactive part of the plant. And that causes a response in the brain. Some people may like it, others may not. Unlike THC, CBD does not produce a high or cause a psychoactive response. What we want to talk about in this section is about higher THC potency. There are THC products that are very high in the level of THC, and those should not be used by anyone new to cannabis. It's important to make an informed decision when you try out cannabis or you're using cannabis, and you have to start low and go slow until you have some experience and know what's going to be the result of using the cannabis product. Now, we want to emphasize to you, with products with THC in them, look on the label. There is a label on any cannabis product with THC in it. And the more THC in it, the more psychoactive that product is. So if you're new to cannabis use, maybe you want to try a lower amount of THC or maybe a mix of THC and CBD if that's what you're interested in.
Ward, you're speaking about the label on the products, and this will be challenging to discuss over a podcast. Once again here, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I'd like to describe for our listeners what they should be looking for to make sure that they look on their products for this stamp that should be on any legalized cannabis. The legal cannabis products are only sold through retailers authorized by our provincial and territorial governments. The legal cannabis products accept products with less than 0.3% of THC, so that's a very small amount of THC, or if there's no THC at all. So all of the products have this excise stamp on the package unless there's no THC in it. And each province or territory has a different colored excise stamp. The stamp has security features, and I can't explain them to you, but it's to prevent forgery of the stamp. So to think about what this might look like, it's a square space, and you're going to have the jurisdiction, which means you're going to have the province listed on this stamp. There's going to be some numbers on it, which they call the unique identifier. There's going to be the words cannabis and a red maple leaf. And there's going to be some colors and inks on it to make it look so that it can't be forged. Too difficult to explain, but what's really most important is to make sure that you see this stamp on a product that you're purchasing from any place.
Yeah, just like you need to see that stamp as an assurance that that product is legal, you also want to see certain labels on the packaging of your cannabis product. Now, if there's THC in the product, there will be a THC symbol. It's octagonal. It's somewhat like a stop sign. It's got a reversed white cannabis leaf against a red background, and then on a black background, you'll see reverse type saying THC. That's to let you know there's THC in the product. We're just going to keep emphasizing this throughout. THC, it's the psychoactive side. CBD does not cause a psychoactive response. If you see the THC label on your product, that means there's some psychoactive substance in it. There's going to be a statement of the amount of the THC and or the CBD in each unit of the product, as well as a statement of the total THC and CBD in the product. This appears in a white label, and that label is specified by Canada, how it must be presented. And it will always look the same on every cannabis product. If the product is edible, the label will also state the total equivalent amount of dried cannabis in it. And remember, that's because you can only possess up to 30 grams of dried cannabis legally, or the equivalent of 30 grams of dried cannabis. So maybe your cookie has 2 grams of dried cannabis in it in equivalency, so you can have 15 cookies with you. Now, there's always going to be a warning on the package, and that will be on a yellow label. There are 8 different types of warnings that Health Canada includes and specifies must be on the label. If you don't see a warning label on it, it's not a legal product in Canada. And finally, if the product's edible, you're going to see the standard nutrition facts label. How much sodium's in it, how much sugar's in it, how much protein, carbohydrates. The same label you're used to seeing on your breakfast cereal and everything else that you buy in the grocery store.
So here's something interesting to chat about. We've been saying that cannabis is legal in Canada. So what happens if you're traveling with cannabis? And as we said earlier, we've had that motto about start low and go slow. Our model for traveling is going to be don't bring it in and don't take it out. There are so many chances where you may be put in a situation where you should not have cannabis in your possession, and you don't want to put yourself in that position. So when you are leaving Canada, it is illegal to take cannabis and any products, including edible cannabis or extracts or topicals, across the Canadian border. Whether you're entering or leaving the country, it is illegal to take it across the border. And cannabis is illegal in most countries. So if you're trying to travel internationally with any amount of cannabis in your possession, you could definitely face serious criminal penalties, both at home and abroad. So it's better not to take it with you, regardless of where you're going. Whether you're leaving Canada or coming into Canada, just do not travel with it.
That's right, Patty. When we talk about travel internationally, of course, we also include travel to the U.S., and our closest neighbor is someone we travel to quite regularly. And it's an interesting situation in the States right now in comparison to us because, of course, cannabis is legal in some states, but it's not legal federally. And in that case, you're going to be, if you're caught with cannabis, you're going to be charged under federal law. So you do not wish to travel to the U.S. with any amount of legalized cannabis in your possession.
And one other thing to think about, we've been saying that cannabis is legal in Canada. So you would think it should be okay if I'm traveling from one province to another that I could just take it with me. And as long as your plane stops and starts in Canada, that would be fine. However, you don't know if there's a chance that you might be rerouted or if your plane is stopping someplace in the States and you've got to get back on, or if the weather is bad and you end up flying to someplace in the States and you have to get off. So it is really advised, just don't travel with cannabis, regardless whether you're in Canada, flying to the States, or flying internationally. You're asking for potential legal issues because you just don't know what's going to happen in the future. So talking about traveling, another really important topic to chat about is the safety of cannabis, because we want to make sure that children and animals and anybody who doesn't want it doesn't accidentally take cannabis in error, thinking it's a candy or thinking that it's a treat of some sort. So there's some very general rules that we can share with you, and they're kind of common sense, but you need to make sure you think about this if you have cannabis in your home. To make sure that you always store your cannabis products where children or pets cannot reach them. There are some cannabis edibles, not the packaging that you get in Canada, but there are cannabis edibles that we have seen, and they look very much like children's candy. And the last thing you want to do is have a child start eating these edibles and have them have an effect from the cannabis in the candy. So we have seen packages of edibles, of cannabis edibles. They're not legal in Canada, but we have seen packages, and the packages look very similar to children's candy. So you shouldn't have those in Canada anyways because they're not legal. But regardless of what they look like, make sure that any cannabis product, whether it be edibles or the dried or the oils, that they are securely stored away. There's a label on them, and they are out of the way that where children and pets cannot get to them. Something else that's important to note is you do not want to store it with your regular food in the fridge. So you really need to think of this as a medication where you don't want anybody else to get it other than yourself.
Well, thanks for that, Patty. We're going to end off this podcast with a little message to you from us. And this is from Active Aging Canada to everyone who's interested in cannabis products. And what we're going to do is encourage you to follow a path of moderation. And as part of that, it's good to share information and experiences. If you are going to use cannabis products, don't be afraid or ashamed to tell your friends or family. You might be surprised to find out other people you know have tried cannabis as well. When you're open to new information, you're going to learn. So we'll leave you with that. And thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Ward. Next week, just so our listeners know what's coming, is that we're going to start to talk about therapeutic benefits, and we'll have quite a few podcasts on the therapeutic benefits of cannabis. So until then, we'll see you next week.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. For more information, go to activeagingcanada.ca, where you can order a copy of our Be Wise booklet. It's available in 17 languages and is free. The views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily represent the views of Health Canada's Substance Use and Addictions Program. Join us for our next podcast, and until then, remember to be active, be healthy, and be wise.